here. He is ready to go. He's going to do a little speechifying first, and then we'll open it up for questions. Take it away, Mark.
I'm watching myself on the live stream so I can see the questions. Hey guys. So most of you know my story, but I want to tell you something that happened the other day with Amina. So we were having a chat with a guy, and we're talking about the campaign. And he asked me a question, and he said, "There's so much corruption going on. There's just so much corruption. How are you not going to be corrupt?" So I looked at him and I thought, well, the answer is because it's me. And then I realized that's a terrible answer because he doesn't know me. And the president of the United States has said recently the only thing that holds him back is because he's himself. His morals, whatever that word means to him. So it would be a terrible answer to say what I want to say, which is I've lived my whole life trying to be good and honest and not corrupt. And everything I've done has reflected that. But he doesn't know me. So instead I said, I wanted to make a joke, but instead I said, the way we fix corruption is our institutions. And the way we do this is we have solid people asking questions and verifying facts. And when somebody wants to do something terrible, people hold them to account for that. And that's what we're missing right now. So when we pull this off, and I'm up there and someone says, here's $5 trillion, but be a corrupt person, I will say no, but also all the people around, all the structure, all the components would say no as well. And that holds us to account to make a better country and a better democracy. So that would be my question. That's my answer to him. I really want to say I'm a good guy, but I can't. We have to build up what we've ripped apart. And the institutions that we've ripped apart are in bad shape. And that's one of the reasons we're doing this tonight. So I can talk a long time, and I really do want to talk a long time about the miserable job growth and the numbers. And I don't know if you guys have seen this recently, but right now, hiring is the worst it's been since 2003. Job loss is the greatest it's been with periods of recession. If you're a kid getting out of college, this is the least amount of money that you will make getting into a new job since the early 2000s. It's not good for the economy, for any growth coming up. And then we can talk about the threat of what AI is on top of that too. So there's a lot to discuss, but this is a town hall. This means you ask me questions and people online ask me questions too. Brian, my plan was I'm going to look at the questions, but I will look at you. So Brian will tell me if there's a question. I don't have to look down. So let's go ahead and do it. So you guys have anything, or I will just make bad jokes, and nobody wants that. Amina, you want that? Yeah. not losing it overnight, we're losing it quickly. And the preeminence that America used to have, we don't have it anymore. So what do? We tried to dissolve the post-World War II safe model of the world. I mean, what are we doing? We have to go back to being more stable and understanding how these things benefit the future of what our country is and be competitive. That's a very strange roundabout answer to the question of what do we do about AI? But it's an important thing to think about because it's a technological change. Okay, look, you don't have to use it. So don't. If it doesn't have the answer left.
So Mark and I were around a different conversation with a guy who works in the military and that's the foresight of the military science. And the thing is that AI just repeats patterns and gets put together. The only real counteractive study on it and that's what we have. So any way that we can use imagination to basically challenge the where we see it not working and challenge it.
So this is a really good point because Mary's exactly right. AI is not artificial intelligence. AI is a predictability engine. It just knows what's the next generative AI is what I'm talking about. We've used AI systems for the past 20, 30 years. If you get on a plane, it goes on autopilot, that's basically AI, understanding the environment. Okay, good tool, right? Cruise control when you're driving down the road. Okay, it sits at a speed, good tool. But generative AI that makes new stuff is only predicting the next possible thing, which means by default, it cannot come up with a new idea. It's derivative old stuff. So it will come back to human connection and human nature and creativity, which is what we excel at. Yes?
If Fermi is not going to work, is it really just a way to grip and get people that are investing in it now a bunch of money and then they're going to walk away?
Yeah. So, sorry. Yes.
So I thought.
Fermi is one giant group.
Yeah.
We know this because if you just take away who the operational people are in Fermi, let's just pretend we don't know them. We do, but we pretend. And if you look at what they did, they said, we're setting up an organization. We're going to have an initial public offering of stock. So just business boy 101, the way you make a ton of money in a business is you go public. And some companies do it poorly, some do it well. We had a local company here, Hastings, a long time ago that did it. They swore they should never have done it because there's a lot of burden on that. But you make a lot of money because regular humans can invest in your company. You take that money and invest in your company then and you build it up. What's happening is CEOs with stock buyback plans have an incentive to boost the stock price now. And so Fermi is a good example of this. We'll have an IPO, boost, cash out. It's one of the rare things when I look through their documents where they could actually have an IPO so fast and then the executives can cash out in such a small window of time. Usually it's rare. Usually you have to see it up there. So total grift. And it's just and it's so abusive to us. I mean, and I sat in a Fermi meeting and two Fermi people were there. They're like undercover. And they're saying, well, you know, the city granted us water rights, but it's less than what the city uses every day, right? Yeah, for the first year. What they didn't say is it scales up over like 3 years, or 5 years, or whatever. So it's a tremendous amount of city. And water that we can't afford to. So Fermi, I mean, if you look at the data centers, if you look at the big one down by Abilene, which is called Stargate or something like that, if you just understand how the funding mechanism works, you think this makes no sense. And it's circular. And I don't mean to go off the tangent on this, but it's important. It's, you know, when the British royalty, when they would marry in their family and marry, so you touch them, they get all bruised out and everything. It's the same thing with AI. So OpenAI NVIDIA invests in OpenAI, they invest back here to buy the chips. So if I said to you, I have a great idea for a company that sells donuts. Let me sell you all my donuts, but you come to my place and then you're gonna sell me all the silverware, and then I sell you the donuts. And I buy the silverware from you for $100. You come and buy the donuts from me for $100, but I only buy the silverware. System breaks because there's any
Check one,
it's
two. Check, check, check.
and if we talk about being in a
Check one,
competitive
two.
marketplace, which is what the Republicans have said for years, but they act completely opposite. So total good. Total. Okay. Hello. 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 Yeah. All right. I can't hear it. So. Hello. Good. And all of our fan online is gone. No. Okay. So, all right. Thank you, Brian. I have never seen somebody work so hard, so fast, under so much pressure. And not even a sweat, nothing.
I am definitely sweating.
I want to address, there's a question on the chat, and this is an important one to me, so I'm going to jump ahead to this question. Pamela says, will you fight for reform of the campaign finance system? So I've said this a couple of times. It gets back to grifting. There's a law professor named Lawrence Lessig who has written extensively on campaign finance reform. He actually ran for president one year, and he said, if I win, I will leave the presidency if we can do exactly what I want to do for campaign finance reform. But he has a really good line. The line is, campaign finance reform is not the most important issue, but it's the first issue. And he's exactly right. We have to gut it. We have to rip it apart. And the reason that we are not taking corporate PAC money is because I don't want to be in a system that's corrupted and broken. We have to tear it up. So one of my first things I want to do is make this the priority of redoing campaign finance. We are so manipulated by big money, and it's to the point, and it really is tough because it's to the point where people just give up. They say, well, what can I do? Elon Musk gives a couple $100 million, and what can I do? And he gets a president elected. So there is a way of financing campaigns through a voucher public system. Other countries have done it. We've actually done it in the past. Ronald Reagan would not have been president without a public financing system. We can go back to these systems, and we can get rid of this big, terrible influx of cash that's happening now. So the answer is yes, 100%. I'm very, very interested in this. I think the problem with elected officials, and I've seen it, city council, and I was at a coffee shop. Guy wants to meet me. Okay. And he says, I want to support your campaign. This is after I'd won. And he passes me an envelope. I said, well, what is that? He said, well, this is our support for your campaign. I said, well, I'm excited about this. I opened it up, and it has all these $100 bills in it. It's really thick. So I said, just give me one minute. I just want to do this. So I flipped with my thumb, and I kind of made a noise like, I said, okay, I've just seen that in movies. I just wanted to do it. And then I passed it back to him. And I said, I'm not going to take this. I don't know what you're asking me. There's no question here. So that's all. That's it. He said, well, are you sure? And I said, yeah, I'm pretty sure. Even at a city council level, the funding is ridiculous. When, and I can go into deeper about that, but nationally, we see millions of dollars floating in from different places, and they're unaccountable. So dark PAC money, and we will see it in this campaign. I think Ronnie Jackson has $5 million in his campaign chest right now. So it's quite a bit of money. And there's a way to beat big money, which is people doing stuff. And so if we all think this country is worth saving and we all work together, then we can all do what democracy should be. And it's not about getting $1 million. It's about convincing your friends that we need to change the course. So, yes. All right. Can you hear a little with the volume all the way up? Good. Okay, I'm going to speak right. Let's do this. All right. Sorry, everybody. We had, I don't know if we had a breaker blowout or something. So it sounded like a breaker. All right. Now your turn. Yes. Oh, yeah, we have a microphone. Well, Carmen doesn't need a microphone.
So Congress passed the SAVE Act today. If it goes on to the Senate and it passes there and becomes law, how is this going to affect people as far as voting?
So the SAVE Act is one of the most anti-democratic pieces of legislation that we've seen in a long time. And it is, if you're a woman and you change your name, you will have to bring your birth certificate or some other ID to make sure you can vote. So it's just like a poll tax from the 1890s or 1870s. And it's just a way for people to stay in power to disenfranchise you. That's it. So it's a terrible piece of legislation. It's going to hurt a lot of people, and a lot of people don't know about it. They'll find out when they try to go vote, and they can't. They'll be off the voter roll. And right now, the Republicans are trying to purge those voter rolls. So it's a combination of all these insidious things. I am a little hopeful that the Senate will not do anything with this. There's a lot of rumbling from that side. But it's pretty bad. And here I am, a person who said we would rip that apart too if I get in there. So yet another thing to put on the list. First day. Okay. You guys are easy. Oh, I know this person.
Okay, I have a question. You mentioned education. You mentioned higher education. Well, let's talk about K through 12, pre-K through 12 education that falls under the Department of Education, which has been watered down to the point of non-existence. Just a little history. The Department of Education was formed in the late 1970s. I'm going to do this. Why am I bending down? To make sure there was an equality of education for based on socioeconomics, based on disabilities, based on lots of areas that the Department of Education oversees. Well, it's no more. In District 13, probably the majority of schools are Title I schools who get Title I funding. The school districts aren't sure what's going to happen with that Title I money. That covers special education, covers a lot of different areas. What are your thoughts on that? I'm just going to make it a big general question like that.
Thank you. I must give good thoughts on this. Otherwise, I'll have a tough time when I go home tonight, because that was my wife. So when I talk about disenfranchising people, it's not just if you change your name and you go to vote, it's for kids who need the help. And when we rip apart education, which was the one of the top things that we said as Americans that we were really proud of, post World War II with the GI Bill to get people into college cheaply so they can have a good future. But what we're doing now is we're tearing apart all these pieces for the future, especially for these kids who need the help. So my thoughts are pretty clean on this, which is we need to reestablish the Department of Education, something that is viable, something that is real, something that helps people. We know what's happening. We know that people who are running the country, and I'm just going to say they want to keep people stupid and non-educated. The president has said this before, that he loves uneducated people. When you lack critical thinking, when you lack education, you tend to vote in a way that's beneficial to him, or you don't vote at all. So we should have a mandate, and the mandate is who we are as people, as Americans, as humans, to help not just people who are going to vote at the polls, not just people who are leaving college and they don't have jobs, but it's kids who are in pre-K, kids who are in kindergarten, kids who need Head Start, kids who need the help, which gets back to daycare for parents who can't afford it, and how those kids can use that help to further into the progression to be a good person in the world. Good meaning successful or happy. I always go back to the Finland story, the Finnish story about education, and what they did. Finland realized that natural resources, they didn't have a lot. They had a lot of trees, and they had Russia on their border. So they had to focus, and what they focused on was people. And they had the top education system in the world. And you would be amazed if you go to a school in Finland, how little they actually are doing what we have our kids do, which is more back to Industrial Revolution and going to school a certain number of hours in a day. Instead, it's creative thinking, it's exploration, and it's really exciting. But they treat each kid with the dignity that those kids need. So we could talk a long time about what I like about education, but I think as far as legislation, to redo what we've had, we have to build back these institutions that we have created, and Department of Education being one of them. I'll give you another example, which is not education, but it's something that happened today. We were talking earlier about the screwworm, which is a nasty little fly. So Ronald Jackson's office put out a press release saying he's going to new legislation to confront the screwworm. Wow, this was great. He's actually doing something. I was amazed at this, so I read it. So it's 3 or 4 pages. And the legislation says the Department of, so it's the USDA, Department of Agriculture, and the Interior Department should have a memo of understanding to work together about the screw fly. That's it. There's no funding. There was it. Now let's look at what the Department of Agriculture has suffered in the last budget, which was $7 billion of cuts. $1.5 billion of those were for local farmers. So it's easy to say, look at me, I'm taking care of you because of this infestation coming from Central America. But really, he's not. This gets back to the dissolving of the institutions that we really rely on. Education being one, but U.S. Department of Agriculture being one. It's the same story, ripping them apart. And then what we're left with is damage and no future. We have to rebuild these things. Yes.
Mark, we do have a question from the chat. I'm sorry, but
Okay.
This is a little bit longer, so I'm just going to read it out.
Of the education and
Yeah,
the screwworm.
go for it. Yeah.
You couldn't have queued up this question any better. So regarding education and the screwworm, tell us about your thoughts on sex ed education, sexual education, and the implications of it in terms of women's health and all of the domino effect of the lack of options for education other than abstinence only, which is what Texas has right now.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that question. That many people will be happy to hear what I have to say about this. Abstinence only is a stupid policy. It doesn't work. We know this. The data, it's overwhelming that doesn't work. Where we are right now in Amarillo, Texas, we historically have had the highest rate of teen pregnancy in the state. I think we alternate between with Harlingen. And it keeps happening because kids are going to do stuff and we are not teaching them what happens or how to, we are not respecting these kids. So we leave them to go. And a lot of parents will say, well, it's up to the schools. I don't want to do the job of the parent. or I don't want the school to do the job that I should be doing, which then they don't. So having having a realistic, I don't say data driven, right? But a realistic sex education program for kids so they don't ruin their lives by having a baby when they're just in the middle of being 15 years old or 16. They don't know. They just don't know. I'll give you a story. I was on a board of a place here in town, and some girls came to this, and they're asking questions. They said their boyfriends were pressuring them to have sex, but they didn't know what to do. But the boyfriend said, "It's okay. Don't worry. It's a full moon." So they said, "Is that real?" I said, "No, that's not a real thing." So this is the education they're getting. So back to education itself in general. We worked through so much terribleness during COVID about what happened with kids, and we were just trying to find our way blindfolded. Nobody really knew, and what we did to a whole group of children, and we see this now. I kind of see it in this one class I teach. It's not a sex ed class, but it's a technology class. But regardless, it's information. And I'm all for the more information, the better, so people can make informed decisions, especially when it gets to their health down the road, especially women's health, because men are making the rules on women's health. And the last time I checked, men are not women. I might have that wrong, but they're making the wrong choices and the wrong decisions. Okay.
All right. Question from the chat here. I know we got this in person, but this is for everybody online. Opinions on data centers. Projects are being steamrolled with little to no public input. The driver is quote unquote defense. Water is essential and privacy is protected under the Constitution.
I gave a really good answer to this when the microphone was out, so you guys missed it online. Data centers and AI are wrapped up in one thing. So data centers themselves, they're really terrible what they're doing to economies, to environments, to local communities. Yes, yes, yes. There are promises of jobs. There are promises of you could come and be a welder. You can come and work on the concrete. Fine. But that doesn't last. And what's left over is an infrastructure that does not have jobs with it, because data centers don't need people. They might have a handful of people maintaining the system, doing some cords, some cabling, that's about it. So it's an extractive, in economic terms, it's called extractive. It's extracting from our community, extracting from the natural resources we have. Now, data centers, there are two versions of this. One is for AI, where they're just churning through information to train these models. And what people don't understand is that when you make an investment into these data centers, and you see all these promises, right? We're going to invest all this money, billions of dollars. The turnover, you buy a chip, and each of these chips might cost $100,000. You put them in the system, it burns out within 9 months, maybe a year and a half. They have to buy new chips. So NVIDIA, the company that makes the chips, is very happy about this. But the other places that are buying them, not so much. But they think if they do the churn, they can figure out the business model before it gets to that point. But figuring out a business model for this doesn't make sense unless you have basically free water, cheap land, and you don't have to worry about it. So local municipalities are going to get screwed over. The people living are going to get screwed over. There are not going to be jobs. And the jobs that come from the data centers doing AI specifically, those jobs, well, they won't be there, but then that's going to take away jobs that do exist in the world, because the technology will. Why do you think companies are spending billions on a technology? The only reason is so that they can get rid of people, because that's the biggest expense. So data centers, and we will see a collapse in this, and it might be this year. Now there's the other side of the data center, which is what Amazon does, which is what Google does, which is they have to hold information. And we are all culpable on this. So if you keep taking pictures of your lunch and you do 100 photos, that goes someplace. And that someplace is a data center. and they have to pay for it somehow. Now, fortunately, right here where we live, or in Wichita Falls, not so much Denton, because Denton is facing some data center issues. We don't live next door to data centers directly, but in Virginia they do. And the noise, the resource extraction, but really the noise is so amazing, so overwhelming that people can't live in these places anymore. It's destroyed their quality of life. We can make jokes here in Amarillo that, well, we've got cattle farms, or those big beef places, and sometimes when the wind blows, our quality of life is a little, kind of like smelly. But that goes away. But data centers don't. So it's back to being extractive, and they are not paying their fair share. So we already seen it. Electricity prices are increasing across the board because of the data center use. There are ways of fixing this. There are ways of saying, if you're going to build a thing, you're going to have to pay. And when they find out the real cost of paying, they won't build it. Now, on the other side, when we are left with shells of buildings, and we are left with these giant infrastructure plans that went nowhere, Fermi is a good example, what do? Does another data center move in? Probably not. So we can build something for the future. What I really want to build is something that replenishes our aquifer. I want to build a whole set of science, real science. I don't know the answer to this yet, but if we focus on it, make our own moonshot program, but not a moonshot program that makes artificial general intelligence the big God in the machine, but really something that helps people in the future, that's worthwhile, and that's worth the investment to do it. The aquifer that we're sitting on here in the Panhandle, it's diminishing very, very quickly. And once you understand the science behind aquifers, it's interesting because it's not just a one big ocean. It's these pools that we suck out with straws, and the water just doesn't come back. But Albuquerque has solved some of this with their own local aquifer to replenish it. So we can do similar. It's a big project. It doesn't happen overnight. And I know a lot of knuckleheads are out there saying, what are you going to do? Bring trucks from the Gulf of Mexico with salt water? I'm sure people are going to say it. That's not it. You focus on the science, you focus on the infrastructure, then you build for the future. Okay.
All right, we got another question from the chat. How do you feel about how Canada, Europe, and China are opening new trade relations with each other and are getting away from the U.S. trade and transitioning away from the U.S. dollar because of Trump and his tariffs?
It's kind of like these economic questions are kind of put in there just for me, so I can kind of nerd out a little bit. So when you destroy partnerships, or when you destroy a supply chain, I'll put it that way, which we've done, the supply chain finds its way to other partnerships. So Canada is saying, we used to have a good relationship with the United States, not so much anymore. What can we do now? China's calling. What China's doing worldwide should concern all of us because they are dominating Africa, which is pretty much the home of a lot of minerals and resources that we'll need for the future. They're moving their way into South America, and now they're moving their way into Canada to build these partnerships. So I think that Canada is acting in their rational self-interest because we, the United States, is an irrational partner. And I don't know how you plan for irrationality. Now, to the US dollar right now, the dollar, and I should not say these terms because it's kind of like, okay, you've heard the dollar is weak or the dollar is strong. You've probably heard these things. The phrasing of that is kind of like made by a guy who needs testosterone shots or something. It's not about strong or weak. It's about the cost of something. When the dollar costs less, then other people can buy other things. When the dollar costs more, you buy fewer of those things, but trade kind of equals out. Normally, we don't want to have a dollar that's in a certain position because when that happens, the rest of the world doesn't want to trade in dollars. And that's happening now. And the big fear that I have, and this is very nerdy and sorry, and I'll stop, is it's called the the reserve currency of the world. And the dollar is basically that. Really, if you watch a movie and you got a bunch of drug lords being chased by police in a movie and they hand out and they have a suitcase that's full of money, it's usually dollars. That's a good indication of the reserve currency. Okay. But the shift of that will be fast. And it used to be that it might have been the euro. There are problems with that, or the yuan from China. But the real threat is BRICS. So that's this other conglomerate that China is part of, but Brazil and India are part of too. And now they're thinking that they can make their own reserve currency for the world. And if BRICS pulls it off, we are in bad shape. And we will not have the trading relationships we once had. We are actively destroying these things. And back to the more meaningful part of this conversation, me as a guy running for a job won't have a lot of control of this, but Congress totally has control of this. And me as a guy running for a job will be part of that control. The president of the United States, a lunatic, is trying to control this, and he should not. That's not the power. But Congress has ceded that power to him because they are feckless and worthless, including our own representative. So we can talk a long time about the reserve currency and what's going to happen in trade and partnerships. But the fact is, we have such ruptures now in the system that I think some of these are not repairable in the near future. People do not trust us. Our allies do not trust us. When we start talking about destroying NATO, when we start talking about invading Greenland, geez, what? So we lose the trust, and then countries build trust among themselves or other places too. And that's what's happening. We will be isolated, and some people want that. They want America first to be America alone, and we will not thrive that way. All right.
All right, I got another question from the chat. Is it possible to stop the privatization of prisons and these immigrant detention centers? It seems like people are doing it as a get-rich-quick scheme.
Yes, it's completely possible. As a matter of fact, I think that that's our only investment in the country right now, is these like concentration camps. And if you look at the money, it's billions of dollars that are privately funded. It's just like an Arnold Schwarzenegger movie from the future. I mean, I can't believe we're living in this. And so, yes, absolutely. I do not like private prisons. I think that if the state takes away your liberty, which is a state monopolistic thing a state can do, when the state takes away your liberty, it should be up to the state to determine how that works, but not to say you're a bad person, I'm going to put you away for 20 years in this private facility. No. And we know now in these concentration camps, detention camps, whatever the word du jour is, these terrible places, Congress has oversight, and they are not allowed into the places for oversight. We've seen the videos now. I heard a story the other day that there's a woman and her kid out of Minneapolis, and they're in one of these camps. I think it's around El Paso, and they're still wearing their winter coat and winter boots. They have no change of clothes. We are not giving people health care that they need. We're ignoring them. We don't know what's going on. It's not just opaque, it's a black hole. This is not what we do. I mean, we can make history doesn't just rhyme on this one. It's really right there that we are living through it. And the people in Minneapolis are showing the rest of the country what to do. But the cost of that was 2 people who got murdered. And nobody wants that. So we can absolutely shut these things down. And you know what? Getting rid of criminals, right? I don't want criminals wandering around the street from whatever gang that they make up. I don't want that to happen. I want to get rid of them and get them out of the country. But that's not what we're doing. I think we have arrested, I think the latest number is something like 180 US citizens. Just you being arrested by masked goons and thugs on the street asking for your papers. This is not the United States. Yes. I think government can do a lot of things, and in this one, government does a really crappy job. I think government does good work at making things happen. When the Department of Education works, it works to the benefit of kids. When the Ag Department works, it works to the benefit of farmers. But there's no one in government who works for the benefit of people who want to empathize with each other, with our neighbors. But I think that's really the core constituent component, I guess, of being an American, is what our empathy is for each other. And I cannot believe that there's a debate recently that empathy is a bad word. I don't understand this at all, but I think that's what it comes down to. I think so. Say it this way, to maybe the Republican people will understand, the currency of the future will be human interaction. I think people will find that that's where the value is. I do fear that a lot of young men are slipping into a place that isn't about human interaction because they can stay on the computer all day long. And I think that the numbers suggest it's mainly men. I'm sure there's some women too. But meeting people face to face, doing these kind of things in this campaign, going to places and just talking to people, that's important. And one of the things we want to do is have a series of these live streams where people tell their stories. Not me, but other people tell their stories about living in this district. And we go and we see them because people need to know being empathetic and getting back to a more civilized time where you're not just a troll online saying random stuff because you're hiding behind your keyboard. And a lot of those trolls, when you see them in person, they always back down, but bullies always back down. But when we try to connect, when I'm in Denton, people in Denton say, we don't have much in common with Amarillo. And on the face of it, they're right. They probably have never been here. If they leave, they fly over this area of town or this area of the state. But when I speak to them, they do have things in common. We're all in the fight together. They all want to have a better life. They don't like what's going on. But once we start talking, and that becomes the conversation. It's the human conversation. So that currency of the future is human interaction. I really believe that is the case, and we have to really build that up. And coffee shops are a great place for it, just to meet people, meet your friends. I try to stick with my friends quite a bit, just to keep going. So I don't know if there's a good answer on the government side. I don't know how you legislate that, but I do know that if we bring people into office that are well-meaning, that will work for people, that are true, they're not full of garbage, then that's a good path forward. Because right now we have a lot of people up there that are just terrible people. And I think about this because I think, do I want to be in the room with them? But fighting this fight is worth it. Maybe I'd be in the room with them for 5 minutes and then put garlic around me or something. So there's a question here.
Mark, I think Mr. John Early wants to ask a
Oh,
question.
sorry.
So in the last 45 years, kind of starting with the Reagan quote revolution, our long-term growth rate has dropped from about 3.7% to 2%, and the share of income going to the bottom half of society has dropped from around 18 to 20% down to about 13%, where that 13% level is kind of where it was leading into and during the Great Depression. And there's so many people in the bottom half that are struggling, that are financially insecure, living paycheck to paycheck, or even food insecure. And I've read studies of farmers that they tested their IQ before harvest when they were the most strained, and after the harvest when they were the most flush. And there was like a 10-point difference in IQ. And I kind of think we're running the economy on the stupid setting, where the people who are financially stressed aren't able to make rational decisions, or less able to make rational decisions. And I want to understand what you would do to move the distribution of income back to a level, to a range where everyone has incentive to be productive, and where the people at the top don't hoard the incentive. And like in the last few years, the smallest share of GDP ever is going to wages and salaries. I mean, we've decimated the incentive to work. And I wonder, I'm curious about your thoughts on how to deal with that.
So John and I, we could spend a couple hours going through the economics of this. Nobody wants that. I kind of do. So to just cut to it, when you have billionaires who pay really no marginal increase, right? Marginal tax. I mean, they're paying nothing. It's not so much about them paying into a tax system. It's about the power they wield with the money that should have been taxed. So taxation is a disincentive for them to do these terrible things that they're doing because they can just do it. On the other side, the taxation system, it provides a disincentive, like you said, for doing things where people want to go and work because people will evaluate it. They will say, well, I'm making this much money to do this, and I'm just not going to do it. But I will give you another example about what people don't know. I taught an economics class at the local college here. First day of the semester, I would say, your boss comes to you. This is the first thing I say. Your boss comes to you and says, I love you. You're great. You're super. I want to give you a raise. I want to give you a raise from $10 an hour to $15 an hour. But that raise will put you in the 90% tax bracket. So I want to give it to you, but just know you're going to be there. My question to students is, do you take the raise? And about 90% said no. So we worked through the math, and then I showed them, well, we have a progressive tax system. So the 90% tax bracket will only apply to a certain fractional part of your money. So you should always take the raise, always. End of the semester, last day. I say, your friend comes to you and says, I'm going to get a raise at work. My boss likes me, but it's going to put me in the 99% tax bracket. Should your friend take the raise? What advice do you give them? 75% of the students say, don't take it. So we're not educating people the right way about money. We don't teach them what the value of saving is versus expenditure. We're caught in this race of spend to compare. And we're doing this because the people that own the show, the billionaires, want us to. So my thoughts, we have to change the tax code to make it more equitable, especially at the very top, and have those people, and it's not a lot of people, but if we tax them the right way, much like we did after the Depression, much like we did after World War II, when we had the highest rate of growth in the United States, and the tax rate at the very top was very high, we know the evidence for it. And we know the other side, where we cut, and we see the pervasive influence of the money into the system. So I'm not answering all of your questions and this because it would take all night long, but basically I'm saying you tax the rich. Now, when the rich means the pretty rich, right? I mean, I'm rich in love. I made a rich moose last night. But the mega rich is what I'm talking about. They have an amount of money that is extraordinary that people don't have a conception of how much this really is. People don't know. It's very difficult. There was a professor who gave a lecture about the one failing of humans. We don't understand the exponential function. So things grow exponentially. People don't understand the relationship between $1,000, $1 million, $1 billion. It isn't not progressive. It is huge. People don't know the true amount of money that people are hoarding. So the government's job would be to do that. Okay. I just looked down, I saw this question. Oh.
What can Congress do? Sorry. What can Congress do to bring down the cost of housing for young people so that we can buy homes?
So one, we have to regulate what investment is in houses. Big investment companies buying a property to say great investment opportunity. So that's one of them to clamp down. The other one, we have to build. We have to build better houses. How we do it, this gets to this theory of abundance. There's actually a book called Abundance that talks about breaking the red tape and the barriers to build better communities or more houses for people. So what Congress can do is do that very thing to make it easier, not less safe and not stupid, but to make it easier that we could build better. I'll give you a good example of Denton, Texas. Denton in the district, I've mentioned it a couple times. Very expensive place to live. A lot of people live, but it's less expensive than it is to live in Dallas. So people live in Denton and they commute to Dallas. But in Denton, it's very expensive to get a decent place, especially if you want to start a family. There is this balance between environmental concerns and mass building. And I get that totally. But we're in the middle of this data center AI thing, and we're not even talking about that. We're not talking about how can we build places for people to live that make it cheaper so that when I was in college, my tuition was $4 a credit hour at Texas A&M University. People don't believe this when I tell them. I know it was $4 because I worked a bunch of jobs to pay for that $4. So now we're asking kids to graduate with all this debt on a promise you'd have skills to go into a career. Those careers are dying. And, oh yeah, why don't you buy a house while you're at it and you can have a family? Are I going to have a family? Is there any reason why we're seeing a decline in birth rates? So Elon Musk is saying, oh, well, he'll just have babies with 50 women and that will solve the problem. That's not the problem. The problem is making life affordable. And houses are one of those things. But so is food, transportation. There are many things we could do to fix these things. The theory or the idea of abundance is pretty attractive, but we have to understand what it really means and where we can build and how we can do it. But really, we have to get rid of the people who are speculating, buying properties so they can make them into Airbnbs. The market's collapsed on that a little bit anyway, but we can't just rely on the market to do things. By the way, I say the market. What I mean by this is people say we need a free market. They say this all the time. And there is no such thing as a free market. There's a fair market. Free market denotes everything is free, doing your whatever you want to do. But the government makes the market because the government makes the money. We can make a fair market that makes things equitable for people. And we make the rules around that. Now I'm speaking in generalities, but there are methods to do this. I'm very sensitive to that cost because my kids are all in that age and I want them to have a good life and they can't afford it. Okay, I'm just glancing down and I see special words like tariffs. Yeah, okay, tariffs, stupid, right? Good, done. Tariffs belong to Congress. Again, they've ceded that authority. Okay,
Would you like me to feed you a question from the chat?
yeah, what inspired you to run? I like that. So I can talk now about Ronald Jackson. The question is, what inspired you to run for office? So two things. Their name is Carmen and Julianne. They inspired me with Indian food lunch. But really, it's because the path we're going on in the country is a path that will lead to violence. It always does. We slide backward into, the dominant economic system in the majority of humanity is not capitalism. It's when the king had his castle and all the serfs worked out there. We're sliding into techno-feudalism as we speak. And that's the rich people owning the systems. Back to AI. Who owns the AI systems? Well, right. So their motivation to get rid of jobs is so they can benefit. So we are not benefiting from that. And as we slide backward into what most of humanity did, a feudalistic system, I'm very nervous about this because that doesn't grow your wealth. That doesn't grow your possibilities over time. So what inspired me, I was pretty pissed off. We have no representation in this area. Ronnie Jackson, who was an admiral and then he was demoted to captain and then he's back to being an admiral again, and it's crazy. He doesn't show up. He doesn't do anything. He showed up once and he got like handcuffed at a rodeo because he was drunk or something. That's not representation. You guys vote for a congressional representation every 2 years. And the founders did it this way because the House of Representatives owns the money and they have to be responsible for it. And when you vote for somebody who doesn't do the job, doesn't show up, nobody knows who he is, just loathed in the community. Now, I'm sure there are some people who love him. I see his signs. Well, signs don't say I love him, but I don't know why you put up a sign for the dude. But I'm angry about that. I'm angry about that this community, we are ignored. We want what everybody wants, and we're not getting it. It's a huge area. It's 40,000 square miles, and it's so diverse of population, but yet we're treated as a stepchild. We have no representation. So do I think I could show up and do miracles? Yeah, I do, because that's the only way that you can approach this job, is thinking I could do miracles. But the reality is, I do not want to be in this job for 50 years. I think we need to have term limits on all these things. I will give you 3 solid terms. I think you can get as much done as you can in that without being part of a system. I do want to break a system of financing that we talked about. But what inspired me to run is when I see my kids leave this area to go for better opportunities other places. And we can do those things here. I want my children to get the best life they can, so I cheer them on. I'd like to cheer them on from down the road so we can see them on the weekends, but we can't. So what inspires me to run is the people in this room, the people maybe watching this podcast. The people are saying, what is happening in this world? Why are we losing our democracy? These are big, heady issues. We could talk about kitchen table stuff all day long, but the fact is we're losing the country. If we don't do something, we will lose it. And we will look back years down the road and saying, remember when we used to have that thing? That was kind of cool. And now we just live in just crap, which is where we are. So these are the small inspirations. I'll tell you, this is a hard job. I've got to stand up here and talk to you guys, and I can't be home. I'm just riding my bicycle. Okay, but this is a worthwhile job to do. And my voice is raspy, but it's worthwhile to talk through it. That's what inspires me to do it. Last question. Oh.
All right. Anybody else in the audience got a question? Otherwise, we'll throw it to the chat online. Going once, going twice. All right. Do you personally believe that Ronnie Jackson wants what's best for the average American or just billionaires? Do you think that Trump also wants what's best for average Americans or just billionaires?
Yeah, okay, so that's a great question. I don't think Ronnie Jackson or Trump wants the best for anybody but themselves. I think that the president and his toadies, Ronnie Jackson being one of them, look out for themselves 100%. If they get what they want by kissing up to billionaires, so be it. If they say, give me all this money and I'll have a big campaign event, I've seen the pictures of both of them together like they're on a honeymoon. They're just getting what's good for them, but it's not what's good for you. And it's infuriating to me, it really is, because this job is not a job. Tell you what, this job is a job of ego. It really is. Like my face is on pictures and stuff, and it took me a while to get used to that. And I was in Denton, and my picture's in a window of a shop, and I think, who's that guy? Okay, but it's dangerous to think more of yourself than you are. You have to do the job for people. You have to know why you're doing it. And every day, this is what I try to, and I talk with the team, and they could tell you every day, it's why are we doing this? And why are we fighting? It's not for us. It's not for me. It's for you. And it's for the country. And we are a small slice of that. Well, small as in 40,000 square miles. This is a pretty big slice of it. But it's if we do this right and we change the state, we change the country, and that changes the world. And we could get back to some stability and some opportunity for people. And then we hold everyone accountable. Everyone accountable. We made so many mistakes in the past by just saying, well, you know, that's a bad guy. But now we're moving on. We're moving on. You guys have probably heard the flood the zone thing that they've, you know, phrased like push, all the stuff. That's exactly what I want to do. But we do it with inquiry, we do it with examination, we do it with testimony, and we just keep going and we don't let them off the hook. And they have to keep coming back and we hold them all accountable. So do I think that they're in this for the regular people, regular meaning not billionaires? No. Do I think they're in it for billionaires? They're tools. And billionaires are looking at them as tools. It's just they use each other to get what they want. But you are stuck in the middle. And that's the thing that infuriates me. So that's why we're here. Okay. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everybody. That's going to conclude our town hall for tonight. So thank you for joining us, and make sure you stop by, check out some swag, check out some lit, and make sure to thank Mark one more time, everybody. Thank you so much.
Thank you.